Good afternoon. The special meeting that was originally advertised for today at 2 p.m. has been canceled, so we will now proceed with the briefing meeting. That being said, welcome. And this afternoon we start off with Board Advisory Committee reports, and I believe Mr. Michael Pace will be presenting first.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is, as was mentioned, Michael Pace. I've been chairman of the Continuous Systemic Improvement for the last 2 years. And as a report that I submitted showed that the first year we focused mostly on the accreditation report and analysis. And this year we went back and revisited the strategic plan, focusing in on the inputs from the school system to achieve better outputs from the students on testing and overall performance, including job place. The areas that we focused the most on was curriculum, the teaching strategies, components that would go along with the classroom management and the implementation of, again, the curriculum, and personnel as it relates to personnel choice, hiring people, and then retaining them. That said, the report will stand for itself. What we found, at least I found as chairman, and I think I can speak for the committee, that the staff that came before us and helped us guide us through some of the procedures and protocols over the last 2 years, I found outstanding. I think you should be proud of your staff. They are knowledgeable and true. They demonstrate a sincere understanding and concern for the job that they have. So I, as an outsider, if you will, the public, I was pleased to see that. The other thing that I would say is that your effort moving forward, I think, don't try to implement everything all at once. There's an old saying, the purpose of time is that everything doesn't happen at once. So the next efforts, I think, for the school board, the administration is going to be to come up with a tactical plan as to what gets implemented when, so that there is a consistency for the learner going through as they move through the next years at different grades through curriculum or strategies that are implied. The other thing is to have some kind of consistency for the teacher so that what is started today doesn't get sidetracked by politics in 18 months. Do that, and I think if that's not done, then I think the strategic plan, you might as well shred it. The strategic plan is built on a consistency moving forward of step-by-step actions, to which I do think you will get better results. The other thing I would also say is that in our research, if you will, one of the big issues for any organization is to align the strategies with the culture of the system. If you're looking for innovation from the staff, the teachers, the principal, then the policies that you have to allow that kind of creativity so that people know that they can risk take and not necessarily get punished if it doesn't work, but they get support to improve it. I think you have a staff that's, we spoke to a couple of the principals, I think are willing to lead that way. So my last comment to you is I thank you for the appointment over the last 2 years, and I've indicated to the superintendent I think it's time for me to step away from this. After 2 years, you probably want to bring somebody else to the table, see what they bring as input or an insight. But I do thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to say, Mr. Pace, that you have done this during a difficult time, during a time of transition. So you've had to accommodate a lot of change in the committee, not in terms of the membership, but just in terms of what you're tackling. And you've really tried to keep focus on a plan and continuous improvement, and you're to be commended for that as the chair, as should the committee be.
Thank you.
I just want to go on record, I never agreed when he told me that. I just want to say that.
Is that part?
We haven't agreed yet either.
Did she say she didn't agree?
Not.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Patty Lochner. Oh, and I'm also going to mention while she's walking up, for your information, and who's the liaison for CSI, the staff liaison?
It's me, but
Denise, we agreed this morning in a workshop that we were going to review the district strategic plan with staff in a workshop on July 28th, so people on the committee may be interested in that information.
Good afternoon, school board members and Superintendent Graham and Mr. Martin. For the record, I'm Patty Lochner, and I'm Vice Chair of the Curriculum Advisory Committee currently. I'm not sure if you have the minutes on your computers. Thank you. As you know, in April, Chromebooks that are going to be used in middle school were shown to the committee and looked at and compared, and lots of information given about them that most of our members did not know, and they had a lot of questions. And those questions are in the minutes that are already been posted. And I thought some of them were very interesting. And one of the things that we talked about was because there's new technology coming into the schools and new kinds of thinking, that perhaps substitutes need to have some training in that department. So one of the recommendations that we made, that the district provide training in all new initiatives to all substitute teachers, like with Chromebooks and thinking maps and even some smart boards for some people. And then the other one that we recommended should be that the district share information regarding all new initiatives, including technology, with our higher ed or post-secondary schools in the area. And there are conversations are being held with FGCU, and there is, and Dr. Graham can probably fill you in on that a little better, a program that's going to be done with technology. So we felt good about that. The Chromebooks were very interesting, I thought, and I think more information needs to go out to the parents of middle schoolers so that they understand exactly what those Chromebooks have and cannot have on them, and why they need to be returned to school, et cetera, and why you can't use your own Chromebook. In May, we didn't have a full attendance of our committee members, but we had asked for a report on the psychological impact of high-stakes testing on students. And Dr. McCullers did some research and shared that research and highlights of 6 studies, which I thought was amazing that there weren't that many studies out. And I do have, and in the minutes too, are the links to those studies. And as you noticed in my report, most of those studies, a lot of those studies didn't come out of the United States. And as we listened and we looked at them and I read through them, I'm going like, I can relate to some of these back when I was in high school, college, et cetera. So I know that this kind of thing has been going on for a long time. But it was a good discussion and a good piece of information. After that, the CAC made and passed 2 recommendations. Mrs. Morgan was our board member liaison for that meeting because Mrs. LaRivere had another obligation. And we appreciate Mrs. Morgan for filling in. That we recommended that the board develop a policy to request and receive specific motions for action from various committees and staff in order to assure a deliberative and informed decision-making process, and that only emergency motions should be considered on the day proposed. There will be more discussion on this one, I believe, when we start again in the fall, because we didn't have a full membership in attendance. And then the CAC recommends that the district form a committee, which would include some CAC members, to examine every assessment, including every item, every means of assessment, and every assessment policy for quality of design and for cognitive, diagnostic, and effective impact. Some of that is being done already through the district. I will personally say to you, when the vote was called, there was not a vote asked for abstention, and I would have been the one that would have said I abstained because I wanted more information on what this was going to be, because it wasn't in writing. and I needed to look at it and internalize it in writing. And I did have a concern that more members weren't there to have a good, healthy discussion about it. So I think it needs to be looked at. And as I said, some of that conversation and that information is already being done within the school district. Any questions?
No, and I'm just going to comment that with respect to the second one, I was well aware that a lot of this work has already been done.
Right.
And that essentially what you're doing is creating an opportunity to bring that work forward to members of the public who were not aware of the work that's been done. So this was, anyway, I just.
And
wanted to make
that's, I think, why I abstained, because I thought that a lot of, having worked in the district, I thought a lot of that was being done, and teachers were involved in the selection of some of the assessments and what was being done with those, and plus directors in administration, so,
Yeah, the original idea was to have another meeting in June.
right.
And to bring staff in to talk about exactly what had been done so that they could format this in a way that was more responsive to what they were looking for.
Correct, and the reason the meeting was canceled was because we weren't going to have a full house then either, and we didn't feel that that was appropriate. Mrs. Revere and I discussed it along with our staff liaison, so that was part of the rationale. And I thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
When that came up at the Board Advisory Chair meeting, other people chimed in, but based on the attendance at that meeting and also on the face of that, what that really looks like, I committed that staff and I would meet with them in their first meeting the following and get some clarification.
Okay, thank you.
What is it are you really looking for, and what do you really want to be involved in, and then we can. So, and I share that only because I know you all are want to be sure that we're responding to the recommendations of the committees. So we had that conversation.
Thank you.
Gwinnetta Gittens.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the board and Dr. Graham and Mr. Martin and audience. We had a very good eventful year. I believe you have all of the report for the District Advisory Council for this year. I'm not going to go through all of the things that we covered this year. I think it was a vast and thorough and concise group of events that we shared with our members. The ones that I do want to focus on that you didn't have since the last report was April. We had the Teacher Incentive Fund with Helen Davis, and that was fabulous because a lot of our members did not realize how much was going on with that program and how effective it is. And one of the ones I really want to focus on is the May meeting, where we, as a result of one of the advisory chair meetings, we had talked about having all of the other chairs to come to our meeting, and we actually did at the May meeting. Because of other commitments, we didn't have all of them, but it was a very good and very insightful meeting for our members. And then they all were able to stay around and then to go to our breakout sessions. Going on down at the end of, well, as a part of our meetings, I'm sure you all realize that we have breakout sessions, and the elementary, middle, and high school parents and representatives meet and discuss issues that are germane to their particular grade level. So I wanted to, as the last report, give an idea of some of the things that are questions. There are some that are ongoing every month, every meeting that will come up, and I'm sure you are aware of them because they are things that come up to you as well. In the elementary group, and I was a little surprised they had the least amount this particular time, usually they have more. They had questions about recognition funding, and what we do is try to go back and answer their questions and get the answers to them. So you can see the answer we gave was that we've informed the Joint Advisory Board about their questions, and perhaps we'll get answers to give to them for that. Testing, of course, is an ongoing question with them, and they also had a discussion about teacher benefits and recognition. In the middle school group, one of their main questions was neighborhood schools. And as a result of putting this on my report at our chair meeting with Dr. Graham and the other chairs, it was decided that a representative from DAC should attend the task force on student assignment. And actually, I did attend that meeting yesterday, and it was very good, and we were able to give some input as well. One of the comments that was brought up, though, after quite a bit of discussion on different things that they're trying to decide, is that we have to consider our whole demographic, that sometimes we make decisions based on pocket groups. And I'll mention that again in just a second. They also want to know about Chromebooks, of course, and incentives for students. One of the things in middle school they wanted to know is students going forward, how can they take subjects in classes that affect their careers, and how do they go about doing that? So we gave them answers to that. The bicycle helmet policy was a big thing, and I checked with Mark Moore's department, and we have an answer for them for that as well. On the hard-to-staff schools, they were concerned about the recruitment efforts. Who are you recruiting? Where are you recruiting them from? And what are the requirements to have them come? Why is it so hard to staff those particular schools that have such good programs going on? And in each of the groups, we asked them at the last meeting to please address the question of how is their SAC, how were their SAC meetings, how is DAC affecting their SAC meetings throughout the year. And in the middle school, they basically said that they have issues, of course, enticing different ethnicities to be involved. And they talked about doing a webinar or something that could include more people through technology. And in the high school group, they started out and focused most of their time on how to increase the SAC involvement at their particular schools. And this was very interesting. We discussed this at the chairs meeting too. And there are a couple of things in here that are a little disturbing and I think should definitely be brought forward. They mentioned that some meetings are every month and some schools, of course, have them quarterly, and that's always been the case. That there's low parental attendance at most of the schools, and some of the parents say that because of the conflicting times and working, et cetera, that they don't have an opportunity to go. The one bullet, I don't know if you have it up there to see, and right in the middle, that was really a bit disturbing to us is the fact that some parents said that at the high school level, that one of the main issues is parents not being involved because, and I quote, possibly it's more difficult to affect anything at the high school level. Yeah, that's a little bit disturbing, and it was to us, and that's why we wanted to bring it forward. You can come at our meetings and see the elementary group is just chock-a-block with people. The middle school group, it's a little less, and the high school group, we do good to have a quorum. So, having taught high school, I understand that people think, I mean, the kids will tell their parents, okay, well, you know, I got this, we don't need you now. But this is where they need them the most because this is the most critical time of their life. So as a result, we were trying to think of things that we could do to help influence parents to be more involved, especially in SAC and in their schools at middle and high school levels. And we had talked about assigning different executive DAC members to go to the different SAC meetings and to talk about what we're doing in DAC and how their influence really is needed. And I just have to say, you know, having been in DAC quite a while, the people that we hear from, that we tell you about their questions, are not the majority, because the majority are either working or they're taking care of their kids or they're doing something else. So if I do have the opportunity to be elected again to DAC, I would really like to see us get into how do we get the opinions and the interests and the comments from those that are the majority, I should say, to find out what they're feeling about some of the things before it's placed before you all to vote on it, et cetera. And I wanted to make sure it's on record to say thank you to Christy Coots for her direction of this committee, and Mary Ryder and all of my executive team. And I believe we made some inroads this year and hope to make some more. In the coming year, November 4th, 2015, we have scheduled a legislative town hall meeting, and we've already begun to contact legislators to be involved in that, and I'm sure we'll get more information out to you. And we also plan to do on a regular basis at least one meeting a year where we have all of the other advisory chairs or co-chairs to come, so that we know that some of the questions that are being asked are already being answered in some other venue. Are there any questions?
Well, since Mr. Toiber's not here to say thank you, I will say thank you, Gwinnetta, for your leadership, because I know you work hard to make this work for the parents who do participate, for the parents and interested community members who do participate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and also thank you, Mr. Toiber, for his assistance as well.
I just want to insert, and grateful for Gwen, I hope she knows that, I tell her, but in my mind, DAC's been a work in progress, and I think Gwen would attest to the membership this year really is more reflective of parents versus staff, when last year it was very, so that was our focus this year. We had a conversation among the chairs, just brainstorming, how do we get those high school folks to come? And because my comment was, it's hard to affect change if you don't come. And so we will, we'll continue to work with the principals where leadership is focused on the SAC part of a school, because some have, fabulous attendance, some do not, and SAC, in my opinion, is about, people will come if it's meaningful work and meaningful conversation. So we're going to work with the principals on what your SAC might look like as far as agendas and that sort of thing. So the DAC, and I remember when DAC, and I'm sure Ms. Dozier does too, I remember when DAC was first created, and this is what it was intended for, to really get parental input from the SACs. It was like the district SAC. So I'm excited to see the growth that's occurring, and Gwen's leadership has been really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you.
Yes, Gwen, I had one question. When you said that the high school kids tend to say to their parents, it's okay, I got it. Well, as the parents are giving their kids more freedom and independence and preparing to separate more from them, maybe it would be a good idea to invite high school students to participate in DAC, because they, through our superintendent's advisory board and our school board advisory, student advisory, they come up with amazing suggestions and ideas and information. So that might be a way of improving the attendance and having high school represented more.
And I know I was the SAC liaison at East Lee County High, and we actually did have students actually work as secretary or actually in office in there as well. And one of the other main suggestions was to have something else, like at the high school, like on the same night, to perhaps have a college night or something to help you fill out FAFSA forms, or something where there's more than just one reason to come. Because for some of our parents, especially at some of the hard-to-serve schools, they're very busy just trying to keep their head above water. So to have to take off and to come or something, it's got to be really meaningful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Joe Ryder here?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Mr. Moore is the liaison.
Okay. Didn't think you looked like.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Graham. I'm obviously not Mr. Joe Ryder. He's much more handsome and distinguished than I am. But if it permits, I will go ahead and deliver the quarterly report for EDAC, if you're all okay with that. The chair was unable to join us today, and because of a communication gaffe, Joe Ryder wasn't able to be here. I take responsibility for that gaffe. EDAC, the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee, met twice during the final quarter, on Thursday, March 12th, and Thursday, April 9th. There were three major discussion topics that came out of those two meetings. The first of was Lee Virtual School. The interest in Lee Virtual School came out of a discussion regarding high school dropout rates and some efforts the district is making to improve that. It was the first that they've learned that we actually had a Lee Virtual School or program, and there was some confusion. So Mr. Al Schilling and Mr. Joe Patura were invited to the committee meeting to give an overview of the Lee Virtual program. They joined the meeting and shared enrollment data, some academic program information, the organizational structure of the program, staffing and funding, as well as enrollment procedures. EDAC, the committee also learned of future plans for virtual education in Lee County and what our vision is for that program here in the district. EDAC did have some concerns and some suggestions and some questions. Some of them were around that topic of high school graduation and the rate that we have currently. They were wondering how Lee Virtual might be of support of high school students that are lacking credits to graduate on time. What could they provide possibly to those students? They also questioned how it could be more inclusive in its enrollment. Mr. Schilling shared that at this particular time, students have to have an aptitude for computers and online technology, as well as have really good reading skills in order to be successful in the program, and there was some concerns that that leaves out some of our students that are in great need. Also, he shared that there are some ESE services that we obviously can't provide in a virtual education environment. So EDAC suggested the district look into ways to become more inclusive in that particular program, or ways that we could be more inclusive. EDAC also suggested that the growth of virtual education might be a way to address our future capacity needs. I think some board members had already expressed that in prior meetings, that it might be a viable option for students, especially those in high school who have credits to finish up, to finish those in a non-traditional setting, online instead of in a brick and mortar school. So one idea that came there they'd like to see explored. A second topic that EDAC discussed was the administrative employee demographics and trends. This is something that they annually take a look at. It's a snapshot. We had data provided by Human Resources that showed us what the head count was at each school and each department as far as administrative staff is, and what their counts were by race and ethnicity. They believe that this snapshot provides them a real good look at the district's administrative ranks as far as diversity is concerned. It also provides them input as far as recommendations to recruitment efforts in the future. They've heard the recruitment plan for instructional staff, and they anticipate having an avenue to make recommendations for specific targets and strategies for the recruitment of minorities at both the school and district level administrative positions as well. The last topic that was tackled in this last quarter was the actual high school graduation and non-graduate tracking. We did have a presentation from Dr. Itzen. He shared with us the way that we calculate the graduation rate or the dropout rate or the non-graduate rate, which piqued some interest as far as where we were as a district this particular year. We did survey all of the high schools back in April in regards to how many kids were on track to graduate on time. As well as that information, we were provided the strategies that each school was implementing to ensure that students were graduating on time, and if not, what type of remedies were being provided to them. EDAC plans to review the final graduation numbers as soon as they become available for this particular year. They've also suggested that possibly a principal from a school that the graduation rate has improved visit EDAC to discuss the strategies that were used in that school that might be useful in other schools where they don't have as much success in that area. EDAC does anticipate future meeting topics. Amongst those are minority instructional recruitment, minority instructional recruitment incentive packages, the retention of minority instructional recruits, the annual review and input of the plan for student assignment, student enrollment growth issues and capacity concerns, minority student graduation rates, and future virtual education opportunities. The committee also wanted to pass along a thanks to the board members that have attended the meetings, Ms. Dozier, Ms. LaRiviere, and Stephen Toybury as our board liaison. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Any questions, board members? Thanks, Mr. Morrow. Mr. Tubb.
Good afternoon, Ms. LaRiviere, Ms. Morgan, Ms. Dozier, Ms. Fisher, Dr. Graham, and Mr. Martin. My name is Bill Tubb. I'm the Executive Director of Financial Services. Unfortunately, Mr. David Hall, the Finance Advisory Committee's chair, could not be here, and Mrs. Joan Schaefer, our vice chair, could not be here either, so you get the third string. I will try to read you the report that we presented to the superintendent and not comment too much on my thoughts on it. Thank you to the members of the staff who support the Financial Advisory Committee and to Kathleen Morgan for attending our meetings. Since our last report, we focused on the district's purchasing system and busing. Mrs. Susan Millay delivered a detailed PowerPoint presentation showing all processes and procedures used in the procurement department. At the completion of this presentation, a motion was made and passed unanimously to increase the district formal bid threshold from $25,000 to $50,000. On May the 20th, the committee traveled to the 6 Mile Cypress compound for a presentation by Mr. Robert Morgan. The information was quite informative, revealing the challenges of transporting 68,058 eligible students on 1,493 bus routes every day. We're currently looking into additional Finance Advisory Committee meeting in June and August, and I'll tell you that since June is here, we didn't have enough interest in the June meeting, but we are going to try to have an August meeting. The committee feels that we've made and given many ideas to save and make money other than raising taxes. We suggested naming rights for classrooms and buildings. Since technology is changing and the way education is delivered, so is the need for traditional classrooms. Virtual classrooms will be the norm. Also, we can use the zones and deliver children within their zone. If a parent desires their child to go to a school outside their zone, that parent can drive the child or pay the bus service for that particular school of choice. This seems to be a better use of the taxpayer dollars. Sincerely, Joan Schaefer, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, board members? Ms. Dozier?
I heard you say something about changing from 25,000 to 50,000. Could
Yes,
you
ma'am.
read that again, please?
At the completion of this presentation, a motion was proposed and passed unanimously to increase the district formal bid threshold from $25,000 to $50,000.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Tubb. Dr. Graham?
We're going to go through the parent guide and Dr. Bohat is going to take over from here. Wait a minute, you're not on, Pete.
Test.
Here you go.
Judge Seals apologizes for not being here, something about being retired and old and doctors, but he sent a substitute. Mr. Getz, substitutes are important. Yes, well, we've got somebody a little bit better. So with that said, and you know I love you, Marvin. With that said, we have the director of the Institute for Youth and Justice Studies at FGCU right down the road, Dr. Sandy Pavelka.
Am I on? Oh, I'm sorry, it's afternoon already. See, time flies. Dr. Graham, good morning, and members of the school board, good morning. It's my pleasure and honor to be here today to speak on behalf of Judge Seals. I'm speaking on behalf of Judge Seals. I regret that I cannot be present this afternoon. A last-minute conflict arose which forced me to be there and to speak to you today through Dr. Pavelka. Although retired, I have kept a pretty active hand in matters involving juvenile courts and juvenile justice. For the past 2 years, I have chaired the Juvenile Law Programs Advisory Committee of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. A lot of research and discussion is going on in a variety of academic and public policy venues around the country on the subject of what has been variously called school-to-prison pipeline or school pathways to the juvenile justice system. Many states and individual school districts are undergoing thorough re-examinations and revisions of their disciplinary policies. Here's why. Number one, high rates of OSS, even for minor school-based infractions, exist just about everywhere in the U.S. Number two, High rates of OSS do not make schools safe, supportive, or welcoming. In fact, high OSS rates is a significant contributing cause of high dropout rates, lower graduation rates, and referrals to the juvenile justice system. Number 3, OSS is disproportionately meted out to minorities, LGBT students, and even ESE students. Number 4, more students are suspended for multiple minor offenses or school-based infractions than for the more serious criminal acts. Number 5, OSS and other attributed to administrators' anger or frustration with a student and not because it was the right, reasonable, or necessary thing to do. The National Council on Juvenile and Family Court Judges has played a prominent role in the past 10 years in trying to reduce OSS rates and keeping children who commit minor school-based offenses out of the juvenile justice system. One such effort is a model development program currently working in 16 sites across the country. It is a long-term structured program in which school districts, with support and technical assistance from NCJ, FCJ, apply science and practice with work collaboratively, not only within their own school district, but also across sister districts in the program to devise a plan to reduce OSS and juvenile justice referrals without sacrificing safety and order on school campuses. Presently, Pinellas County in the state of Florida is one of the 16 sites. The creator of this program is Judge Stephen Teskey, a judge in an Atlanta suburban county and perhaps the foremost expert in the nation on school-related juvenile justice. I've known Judge Teskey for 5 years, and we currently serve on the board of directors of NCJ-FCJ. At a board meeting last March, I spoke with him about the prospects of bringing this program to Lee County. He explained that getting the program requires being awarded through a very competitive process. He then offered me an alternative. This program is called the School Justice Partnerships Technical Assistance Design. It's a 12-hour workshop in which he brings his team of 5 to work with a group of 10 to 15 local participants. The 5 presenters are Judge Teskey, the superintendent of Clayton County Public Schools, the chief staff of the Clayton County Juvenile Court, and director of safety and security from Clayton County Public Schools, and an administrator of Clayton County System of Care. The local participants should include high-level representatives from education, preferably Dr. Graham, law enforcement, preferably Sheriff Scott, the judiciary, the state attorney's office, the public defender's office, the Department of Juvenile Justice, and community-based service providers. Its purpose is not to tell us what to do. As I understand it, the first half of the program is devoted to equipping participants for the second half, which is devoted to collaboratively developing our own protocol agreements to address school-related offenses. I've spoken with Dr. Graham and Sheriff Scott, and both have expressed an interest in participating. The program's expenses are underwritten by a private funder. I don't know if that covers absolutely everything, such as meals and travel, but I do know that we don't have to pay for the fees for service. They tell me Lee County is penciled in and approved for funding. All they need now is your acceptance and approval. I strongly urge you to accept the offer. If so, I will be glad to help make arrangements and convene the appropriate stakeholders. Thank you for your consideration, and again, I apologize for not being here today. And may I go? I just want to mention, those of you who know me, I have several hats. One is I'm co-chair of the K-20 Security Committee under Homeland Security for this region. And another, I'm the chair of the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board for our circuit, and also a nationally known expert in restorative justice. And I know about Judge Teskey's work and this project they're talking about, and I also strongly recommend that we move forward with this, because it would give us an opportunity to look comprehensively at our school discipline code, at the issues, good and bad, and then with the key stakeholders in the room, decide what we need to do, what works, what doesn't work, and how to move forward.
Thank you. I'm just going to interject here that Ms. Fisher and I had the opportunity to hear Judge Teskey speak, and actually brought to the board, I believe, a year and a half ago, a recommendation that we look at this. So I am incredibly excited that you were coming with a formal proposal, really. Dr. Graham.
I would just say you can thank the perseverance of Dr. Bohatch and Judge Seals working with Dr. Bohatch and Ms. Fisher. It's been a combined effort, and so this is just information for you, and I need to know if you need more information before you want to say we can go ahead and pursue, or if you're comfortable with us moving forward. So that's what, today, if you need more information, I want to bring more information, or if you're comfortable saying, go forth and see the details of it and and I've read the information that Judge Seals has provided, and the data is impressive on what happens. And we've seen in our own ALC what's happened with restorative justice being a part of what goes on there. And this all started really with a conversation. Judge Seals thought we should completely change our code of conduct. And that's sort of where the conversation began. And then as we drilled down, and I asked a lot of questions and he asked a lot of questions, it was bigger than changing a document. Yeah. And so we would like to pursue this, because we believe it would be a whole new way of addressing the behavior issues in our schools. And just need to know where the board is on it, because obviously if we do it, it would be a district-wide effort. It would, not tomorrow, but it ultimately would impact the entire district, so.
Ms. Fisher.
Well, obviously, I support this after listening to Judge Teskey's presentation and looking at the research. And over the past several years, we have made strides in changing up the code of conduct. We've included interventions. And when we look at what our purpose is, which is academic achievement for students, it's almost a no-brainer to realize that when kids are out of class, ISS, and when they're out of school, OSS, they're not learning. And oftentimes, that's how they become involved in the juvenile justice system, because then they're out in the streets getting into other kinds of trouble. So ultimately, all of the components of our community, the law enforcement, the state attorney's office, mental health and substance abuse agencies all end up working with the same kids. When we look at our total population, it's really not a large segment of that. However, the time and money spent, because we're creating a process where there's no prescription. If we ask any assistant principal in this district who's dedicated, and we have an assistant principal at every school, am I right, dedicated to discipline. So there's a discipline referral, they come see the AP, they get time out, they get OSS, and then they're back again. Okay, so with this program, number one, we'll look at what the infraction is and how we deal with it. There are more positive and constructive ways to deal with discipline and lack of proper behavior. Keeping kids out of class is not one of them. It doesn't have a positive result. It increases our dropout rate and lowers our graduation rate and our test scores also. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I hope that my colleagues will consider reviewing, and I asked Dr. Bohatch about the data, how is it working for us now? How is it working for people all over the country when you give a student a referral and they go see whoever's in charge of discipline? What actually happens? Being a psychology student, I once heard Dr. Bill Glasser talking to a group of educators, and he was talking about when he was an administrator in a school, and teachers would send the kids down to the office. And they would say to him later, well, what did you do with him? And he would say, I talked to him. And they're like, that's all you did? Well, yeah, that's what I did. I talked to him, and he's not going to do it again. But of course, he did, because kids are avoiding either academics that are too challenging, or they're having social problems, relationship problems in the class. So with the Restorative Justice Circle, when they can see how their behavior impacts others, and when they can find out that they're not alone, that they're not the only people with these academic and social problems, it changes the way they behave, and it changes the way we deal with their behavior. So anyway, Dr. Glasser one time at a faculty meeting said, well, I have had 10 questions this past month about what I did with kids who came down with a referral. He said, I think I've solved the problem. I've ordered a gun, and the next one that comes down will be shot. So with that, I'm in support of this, and thank you, Dr. Bohatch and Sandy, for your work on this.
Other comments? Ms. LaRiviere?
So, Ms. Fisher, you mentioned the restorative justice. Is restorative justice part of this component that comes with it?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, it is. It's actually, it would be a component of the project comprehensive look at it. And not only instilling, not necessarily a program, but the philosophy, the principles, and practices associated with it. And then, we've had small pilots of restorative practices across the school district, and we adapt it to each school. So, for example, ALC right now has circles that are being implemented. Alva School does as well. We're going to re-implement accountability boards out at Riverdale High School. So it really depends on the culture of the school and really adapting those practices within the school.
Thank you.
And if I may, just really adding, I'm sorry, this is me, I apologize, but really looking at also the student, as Ms. Fisher said, looking at the issues relating to the student, not only with regard to the referral, but comprehensively what's going on with that student. Because it's not just about that one incident, it's about so much more, and we need to really get to the depth and root of what's going on with that student to make long-term change.
Mrs. Dozier?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Graham, I heard you say that Dr. Seal, our Judge Seal said something to the nature of we needed to overhaul our entire code of conduct. Was he, when he was speaking to that, was he talking about the offenses or what's in the code of conduct?
Our responses to the behaviors. And he's
all right.
he's about, and you all talk about it all the time, more interventions before we send them out.
Okay, but he's not saying we should lower our expectations?
No, no,
Okay.
absolutely not. Dr. Bohatch, you
I think the biggest, Ms. Dozier, the takeaway that the judge had from analyzing the code was that all of the offenses ultimately lead to OSS, even the minor ones, first offense, second offense, third offense, fourth, fifth, you're going home. So that was his big aha after he analyzed that. So,
And that some of them probably don't even really warrant
Exactly.
OSS, but instead, there might be some other type of discipline that
correct.
would be warranted
Correct. And
opposed to,
we can all agree there are offenses that certainly merit OSS, for sure, as
Okay.
a former principal.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand, that was a great question, Ms. Dozier. I don't want anyone to misunderstand that we have no thought of stopping dealing with the big stuff. What we're trying to get away from is as Dr. Bohatch just said, everything, all roads lead to OSS at some point, and, all of you except Ms. Morgan, no offense, have been in a schoolhouse, and you know how that works. And you think, oh my gosh, this started because he was late to class.
Yeah.
And then, it just
Exactly.
built, and all of a sudden he's going home, and if you drill it back, it's because he was late to class, and it just started from there. So we have no thought of lowering our expectations. I'm glad you asked that, because that's important to understand. This is about increasing our interventions.
okay, thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
It's kind of like When I first had the opportunity to serve on the board and we did expulsion hearings, I was amazed to look at the documents that we were given and to see that some of these kids had been having discipline infractions, starting with little things disruptive, out of seat, all the way from early elementary school, and finally culminating in high school with an expulsion. And the amount of time that they had had out of school along the way certainly didn't lend itself to making them feel like they were part of the school culture or like they were welcome there or belong there. So if we have a more positive intervention, and if they are educated in looking at how their behavior impacts others, it really changes the trend. And I know that when Judge Teskey reported about Clayton County, their serious infractions diminished dramatically as the program took hold. And it's kind of like it takes a village. The whole community is involved in more or less, rather than punishing small infractions by kicking them out of school, giving them opportunity to talk with others, to have work details, to share what the impact is on the school community and the community at large, and actually changes the way the student looks at things, and also helps to make it easier in the long run for educators to do their job, because they're not spending an inordinate amount of time and energy dealing with infractions.
Okay, I think, Dr. Graham, you have an unanimous support for moving forward with this. Is that correct, Board? Mrs. Dozier?
Yes. However, I think that, with all of that being said, I guess we're not going to go over all the changes that are in this. And because of a recent situation that occurred here in the district, I think we need to look at the dress code specifically, because that's where we make policy. That's where we decide. And, it's real funny, and I'm just going to put myself out there in this position, because I've talked to a lot of people around this issue, and I read what it says, and I'm trying to get back to that page. But if you go to the Code of Conduct, I'll tell you which page it is. Go all the way down to, I think it's page 38, I believe. I think it was 30-something. Okay, let's see, 33.
Well, there's no numbers
Is it 38?
on here. Dress code, it says dress code, see page 26. I don't know if that's the same one.
Well, you've got notice to parents, and then you've got scope. Well, scope of authority was one that I wrote down, because scope of authority, it says a student is on school board-owned property. All right, obviously in this incident, there was a different understanding for the expectation at another event. And I know that we have school-related functions. There's been a lot of talk around school-related functions. Well, for instance, at football games, there's not a dress code expectation at football games that students have to comply with the dress code. So how do we articulate that and yet still cover ourselves in events such as the National Honor Society? Because I know that there was a parent permission slip that each student had to have signed, and on that slip, it did address the fact that, the dress code was in effect, and that, the expectations for the field trip. So that was covered there, and yet that was something that was never addressed. When you go to page, and I think it is, it's so much easier to get to things when it's paper copy. Was
Look
there
in the bottom, it's
just a
page
minute ago?
118, and it's number 30.
Are you looking for dress code, Ms. Dozier?
Yes.
39?
Is it 39?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, somehow I skipped right by that. 'Cause I didn't write the page number down that was up here at the top.
On our document, it's 47.
47.
Oh, that's nice.
All right, I didn't,
That's the issue. You probably looked at the dress code and then, but it's page 47.
okay, so when you get to page 47, and you look at specifically item 6 in the dress code is the infraction that we are talking about, because it talks about bare midriffs, strapless, or low-cut clothing, all of these items. And, you know, and I said, this is why I'm going to put myself out there. Halters and spaghetti straps, you know, all of that is addressed here. You know, and I mean, we had people that responded to us from as far away as Colorado, as far away as California. You know, there's a reason you have dress codes, because it's an expectation. And this is what I found myself telling some people. Some students look fine in some attire, but then you have other students that are real busty, for instance, and I'm talking about girls right now. And just because of the way they were made, or just because of the design of their body, that same dress on them would be very offensive. So this is why you have a standard dress code, so that no one will be offended, there will be nobody offended, you won't be offended by what you're wearing, but at the same time, I know why we have a dress code in school, because we want kids paying attention and not looking at what other kids are wearing. That's part of the rationale for a dress code. So, something has to be addressed here, and I don't see anything addressed here. The fact that this was a major situation in this county, it went national, then it went worldwide, and we have not addressed it here. Shame on us for not addressing
Okay,
it.
can I interject real quick?
Sure.
The work with Teskey will be for 16, 17. That's the proposal. Hoping to get them, yes, the following. We're hoping to get them here in the fall to begin the work.
The document you've presented today is the document for the 15, 16 school year, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you,
There's no change.
But we briefed on the, 28th?
Yeah, right.
We can certainly bring it back again. We'd have to advertise, Mr. Martin, another 30 days, but that wasn't suggested at the initial briefing. I thought you were talking about moving forward with the group, yeah.
And since we were briefed, we've had a situation.
And so if there are changes you want to recommend, we need to know them, and
Yeah.
we'll certainly go back and
can do it.
look at them. I don't want Dr. Bohatch to take a hit, because we briefed it and nothing was said, and we didn't go back.
I do have a change that we added, the
Yeah.
definition of parent to the parent guide. that
So
was
if,
suggested.
if the board has concerns and wants to make some adjustments to the dress code, we just need to know that. And then we advertise accordingly to
Do it.
pre-brief and have a hearing.
Ms. LaRiviere.
This is just as I look at it on number 6. If we want spaghetti straps to be included, we need to include it on number 6. Spaghetti straps are not included in number 6.
And the other issue I heard Ms. Dozier talk about is, what do we do about, and don't let me put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what do we do about, we have a dress code for school-related functions on school campuses? Are we suggesting, and then we have a football game and kids wear what they want. So is there something in the code that says after hours don't count, or what? How do we address that?
Now, if you look up here under scope of authority, it's very clear under scope of authority. So that's why I addressed that issue here, because that's where it would need to be addressed, is under scope of authority. I'm looking for it. It's right here on, according to, it's 35 on our computer.
Under the
Page
scope,
35.
excuse me, under the scope, it does say attendance at school-sponsored activities. Of course, that's very broad. With the examples that you gave, that would also apply to a football game. So there may need to be some clarification, but it does
All right,
include
it says a
school-sponsored
student being transported to or from a school or school-sponsored event at public or school expense, okay? So
plus, yes.
then you've got attendance or participating in a school-sponsored activity. So I think we have to clearly define, and that's what I say, we're policymakers here. We have to clearly define so that this incident will not occur again. Am I not making myself clear?
No, you're making yourself clear. I'm just wondering if this was I guess my dilemma is, was this a matter of policy or was it a matter of execution?
It was a matter of policy. And there were numerous violations of policy.
It was not executed properly.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. Thank you. It wasn't executed properly.
Because clearly, we don't say spaghetti straps, but when you go back to policy, it talks about tank tops. A tank top is anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches. So anything less than that would even be a greater violation than a tank top.
So what I'm hearing is we need to work with schools on enforcement, is what I'm hearing.
No,
Change policy.
no.
What do you want to change? What do you want to add?
I think we have to clarify the expectation for where it says school-sponsored events in the event that we almost have to say what events are excluded from the dress code policy. For instance, there was a very good point made, the fact that students that go into the proms do not meet dress code. You know, so if you think about the strapless dresses and the evening gowns and all of that, so we have to delineate between all of these activities somehow. We need to articulate that. And the one thing that was repeatedly articulated was the fact that this was a first offense. This was the end of the school year. It was the end of the school year event. So the expectation should have been that the understanding of the dress code was already there.
Except
So-
first offense means it's the first time a student has actually broken the
Right,
code.
right.
Regardless of when it happens. If it had never happened before, or there'd never been discipline for it before, then that would be the first offense, regardless of what time of year it happens. But I understand what you're saying. And I would tell you that most kids know the dress code, and they know when they're in and they know when they're out. So we just, might I suggest that, because I really believe, because the dress code is a committee and that works on this, I would really like to get some, I want to know what you want included in it, and then have Dr. Bohatch meet with whomever he can get from the committee this in July, and have a conversation about what those exceptions would be. Because that, if the whole board wants to go this route, then I think that's the way to go, is maybe list some of those exceptions. It's dress code is tricky, and but you know, I know I always had a dress code for prom, and we always stated it on the instructions for prom. And I don't know that anybody's ever talked about dress code at a football game, though I sent kids home from a football game for how they were dressed, because there is a limit to the exceptions. So, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that as a principal. So I just need what the whole of the board would like to do, and then we'll do it.
I got a question for Mr. Martin on the timeline. We need to approve code of conduct prior to the start of the school year. Are we okay?
The code would need to be re-advertised for the purpose of adoption. It could then be briefed on July, is that a briefing meeting that day? I believe it
Yes,
is,
we
July
have a briefing.
28th. And then the first meeting in August is August 11th, at which it could be adopted.
Okay.
So I guess still before school opens.
And I don't hear any change in what we're actually going to let kids wear, as much as
How it's worded?
how we're going to enforce it and when it's going to be
I
permitted.
hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, I need to know if this is,
And I don't know if this applies to the parent guide, but there was also the other aspect beyond the dress, was it was a sponsored event where the school sponsor was supposed to have been in attendance. Is there anything in that addresses that aspect?
That's not part of dress code, that's another whole. And all those conversations have been had, I can assure you.
Okay, we'll get to work on it.
Need
Well,
direction.
but Mrs. Dozier, they need specific.
No, I think staff can come up with specifics.
And our, well,
I don't
okay,
want to get down in the weeds.
I just want to be clear, all four of you are in agreement, move this forward. That's the first thing I need to know.
To move it
If,
forward.
well,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm hearing one person,
Clarification of language.
yeah, is,
well, see, I guess my issue is, I go back to, I'm not so, I don't see the need to revise the policy. I'm more concerned with the way the policy was enforced. That was, to me, that was the breakdown in this whole incident. I don't see the need to go back and revisit policy. Now, maybe there is a way in protocol, if there are decisions being made, and this is not the case with the National Honor Society, but if decisions are being made at the school level, as Dr. Graham suggested, about various events and what's acceptable and not acceptable.
well, I do see
then-
value in a, I'm sorry to interrupt. I do see value in a, maybe a statement, and Ms. Dozier tried this on, a statement that says, there's a general statement that the principal has the, I don't want to say right, but the principal may,
Authority,
has the authority to,
use discretion
yeah,
related
because there
to-
used to be a phrase that said, this may change, because part of dress code is it's so trendy that you can,
Yeah.
you can leave stuff out. And then the second thing, what I'm hearing is, it wouldn't hurt us to add something in there about, there are some events that we could all agree, we don't need to follow this exactly. So, would that cover what you're talking about? Okay. So if no one objects to us doing that, we can do that and still not re-advertise and do what we need to do.
Fine.
Okay? Ms. Fisher?
I think the dress code is complete the way it is, and I don't know in the 30-some-odd years I've been in this district that we've ever had this kind of a thing happen before. Dress code is not enforced across the district in a cohesive way. It's not uniformly addressed. I mean, so I think it is more an enforcement thing. It says here, dress code violation. Now, you know, I've been to a number of different events that are school-related, where kids are getting scholarships and awards. And in fact, at some of the recent 5th grade and 8th grade graduations, and little girls had, like what I have on now, a tank top kind of a dress, or their shoulders were showing. I think that when they're dressed up for an occasion like that, and it is not offensive, really, I mean, this is 2015, and I think that the dress code in school during the school day is very important. And I think that first we need to enforce that consistently, and it's clearly right here, dress code violation, first offense, level 1, verbal warning and parent contact. Okay, so I think it was a matter of enforcement. And I'm not wanting to ask staff to go back and spend hours and time and money making changes for something that probably will never happen again and is already addressed in here. I mean, we could put some kind of a blanket statement that for special events like dances and award ceremonies, that we don't. But how do you define that? How do you tell them exactly what it is? You know, it depends on next year what comes into style. So
Ms. LaRiviere.
I think if we start to go in and meddle oh, in this situation, you can do this, think it begins to muddy the waters. You know, then if we say, oh, I think it's just better, I like it the way it is. It's a matter of our staff members executing and being very clear to the students. These are being followed very carefully for this event.
So then what I'm hearing is my role is to get enforcement consistent across the district.
Correct.
Yes.
Dr. Bohatch.
What, I have a question. What is the purpose of dress code? I mean,
Well,
why do we have dress code?
Well, the theory is dress impacts behavior, and it does. And so dress code was, my understanding is, you know, when I was brand new at the role of administrator, it was about keeping children focused, keeping the boys from being distracted by the girls, keeping the girls modest. It was, you know, colors for gangs. It was all those things to have some sense of uniformity without having a uniform. That's really what dress code is about. And there is absolutely, you know, when Disney started grad night, there was a very tight dress code, and the whole reason they did it was because they knew the kids would behave differently than if they just got to, and that's probably a tighter dress code than any event we've got, is when they go to.
They used to be jacket and tie, and right now they're allowing jeans and T-shirts. It's a shame what they've done with that.
Yeah.
And I can
Well-
guarantee you the behavior,
Because it's not Disney anymore.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
behavior's
that's why. So,
increased.
but yeah, so it's about behavior, really.
Right, and about not disrupting and distracting so that instruction can take place. So I'm concerned about during the school day, certainly. But
Okay, I think we understand what we need to do.
We don't need to do anything, just enforce.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I meant.
In terms of redoing the policy, okay.
thank you.
Any other concerns about the code of conduct before we move on? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
But we did not give a direction.
Yes, we did. Didn't we give the direction for the proceeding with,
Yeah, before we start talking about dress code,
All
yeah.
right, thank you.
thought we had.
I just wanted to make sure.
welcome Maggie Stevens. Her mic's not, no.
It says do not push, oh, there it is. Thank you. I'm bringing to you today the bylaws of the Head Start, Early Head Start Policy Council, which is bylaw 436. The Head Start Policy Council is parents' first way to get involved in their children's education at the pre-K level, which then sets the stage for them to become as involved as PTA and SAC members as their children continue through school. As you well know, the Policy Council has shared governance with the school board, and we are thankful that both Ms. LaRiviere and before her Ms. Morgan have been our liaisons to the school board and come to Policy Council meetings. The changes that we are making have to do with the new Child Care Partnership Grant. All children in any form of Head Start or Early Head Start, those families must have representation in the Policy Council. In our new Child Care Partnership Grant, there will be 72 new children, and so we need to make sure that they have representation. So the changes in the board policy are around eligibility for members. We need a representation that's fair across all children, and so we've just simply included additional member for those 72 children in the Child Care Partnership. We also know that on last Friday, the new performance standards have been released by Head Start. These were the ones that we were expecting in 2005, and staff is now all reading through them. We expect that in next year there may be additional changes that we may need to bring in this document. That's it.
Any questions, board members? Is it one representative per site, or is it one for all of the additional sites?
It's one representative per site at the Head Start, and then it is one by program option for Early Head Start. So we have one for the home-based, one for the center-based, and one for the new Child Care Partnership. And they will vote by their sites and have a representative for each, and then vote for an overall representative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Patty?
Board members, Dr. Graham, Mr. Martin and I are continuing the review of Chapter 1. Today we have brought forth 17, hopefully, final versions of policies in Chapter 1. They were previously pre-briefed in May and are scheduled for the public hearing. Along with those 17, there are 2 previously old policies that we would like to eliminate. And this is that final opportunity if you had any questions or comments for Mr. Martin or I before we take them forward to the public hearing next month.
Board members, any questions? Mrs. Dozier?
I did have a question. I'm looking for it. I wrote it down. Okay, we did decide to leave the internal
Auditor.
audit in. That's not for removal, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We made one change to that one, and that is policy 1.17. On May 26th, I believe is the last briefing, we were requested to remove with that specific reference to the Lee County Clerk of Court and change it to an outside source. And that is reflected in these documents.
Maybe it was already taken care of. I guess it was. I can't find where I wrote the question down. Go ahead, move on.
Okay. Other board members? No questions? Okay.
Thank you for your work on this.
Okay, this leaves us with 5 remaining policies, which we'll bring back for a pre-briefing that need to be revised. In the meantime, in the summer, I'm looking for your direction, whether you'd like us to move forward and begin the process with another chapter, or would you like us to hold off on doing that? Summer is sometimes a good time for staff to begin that review process.
And in that context, I wanted to ask Mr. Martin, I know that at the time we had that investigation in the district, there were recommendations made for specific, yes, IAG made recommendations for policy changes. Are they in the next, would they be picked up by going to?
That would be Chapter 5 primarily. There are a couple suggestions that would be in other chapters, so that not all the recommendations would be dealt with in a single chapter, but the majority of them would be in Chapter 5 concerning personnel.
Okay. I guess my preference would be that we would then tackle 5 first, but I would like to ask the other board members whether they have a preference with respect to where we go next.
I agree with Chapter 5.
Mrs. Dozier?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Amy, if you could do as quickly as Patty did, I'll be really impressed.
Okay, good afternoon. Dr. Graham, members of the board, I don't know that we'll be as quick as Patty, but we'll do the best that we can. First, we wanted to make sure to give you, remember, per your policy, we are giving quarterly updates related to our investments. So to that end, I have with me today as part of the budget briefing, Mr. Bill Tubb and Mr. David Jang from our Davidson Investment firm, and he will be giving us first an overview of what our investment returns have been.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Graham, Mr. Martin. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is David Jang. I'm the Senior Vice President of Davidson Fixed Income Management, and I'm very pleased to present the quarterly investment report for March 31st, 2015. If I could bring you to your first page, which is your cash that we oversee for the district. If you take a look on the left-hand side, you have a nice little pie chart, beginning with the upper right-hand side, the blue part. This is your Bank of America and SunTrust. This is the operating account for the school district. we keep roughly $30 million in there to offset all bank service charges. So right now, the district pays zero in terms of bank service charges. As a comparison, last year, you paid on an annual basis roughly $90,000 a year to the previous bank. On the left-hand side, to the left is the Florida Community Bank. You keep roughly $65 million in there, earning 40 basis points, which is very good in today's interest rate environment. And the vast majority of your funds is in what we call the SBA, or what is called now the Florida Prime Fund. This is all your cash. You need this for your liquidity purposes. The best part, if I could take you to the right-hand side of the table, your current month's earning right now is roughly $50,000. For the past quarter, from January 1st to March 31st, roughly $148,000. And the 9 months that you've had these bank accounts, roughly $300,000 you've earned. If we were to add the final 3 months for this fiscal year, coming up for ending June 30th, we roughly around $450,000 approximately. So Dr. Desamore, Mr. Tubb, and the staff has done very well in implementing our cash strategy for the district. Very well done, is all I can say.
Mrs. Dozier.
Any questions?
Did I hear you say that we used to pay up to $90,000 a year in bank charges?
Correct. Prior to my arrival, the previous bank was Bank of America, and they had roughly, in the most recent 12 months, they had charged roughly $90,000
Per year?
per year.
And those charges were for?
Typical running of a typical school district account, nothing out of the ordinary, but we went out for a banking RFP, and I was a consultant on that, and we selected SunTrust Bank, which made an offer where for keeping roughly $30 million in the bank, you pay no service charges. You are basically using the same services, probably more now, with the current bank.
Okay. And I guess my question would be, why have we never done that before? Were we prohibited from doing that before because we did not have you on board as a financial advisor? Because I know there were restrictions of what we could and couldn't do until we actually hired a specific firm. So prior to that time, would we have been able to do that?
I cannot speculate. All I know is at that time that you had the contract, it was probably competitive. But in order for the bank to win your business, I helped negotiate for the district very favorable terms.
We weren't prohibited from doing a banking RFP before. It is true. When we did the banking RFP, the time prior to this time when we were having Mr. Jane consulting with us, we did get competitive rates at that time. The market changed, our RFP came up again, and we decided that with Mr. Jane's help, we were going to go forward with another RFP to see what competitive rates we could get based on this environment we currently are in now.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you helped with that RFP, and I appreciate the fact that we were able to sharpen that pencil, so to speak, because for years, obviously, we have been throwing $90,000 out the window. Because we had that company on board for quite some years. And this is the very reason why I say that we need to put RFPs out on the street, because if we stay with the same company over and over and over again, we're not always getting the best bang for our buck. And I know that it's cumbersome on staff to do that, but this is one of the reasons that we have gotten to a rotation of everything that we're doing for RFPs, because times have changed. And I appreciate the fact that we've definitely changed things here, so thank you for that.
Just a note on that prior RFP, interest rates were much higher at the time. And we were making more than the $90,000 on the $30 million having it invested rather than leaving it in the bank. So the market changed, and that swing was one thing that caused us to do this. And
That is correct. I forgot to mention that in the previous one, when interest rates were a lot higher in 2007, interest rates would have been roughly 5% versus the 50 basis points that you're getting from your bank now. So that is true.
I would also like to point out that Mr. Jang introduced us to Florida Community Bank for the 40 basis points for that piece. If you look at the $300,000 in earnings, about $200,000 of that came from Florida Community Bank. And this portfolio is not part of the portfolio which his fees are based on. So he did that for us for free, and we're not paying anything for having had that increase.
Okay.
Mr. Tubbs is a very hard negotiator. The last comment I'll make about your cash portfolio is all the money is under the Florida Chapter 280, which requires all banks who hold your funds to have post-collateral with the state of Florida. So your investments are doing very well and have the proper collateral behind it. Any other questions on the cash portfolio?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The next one is your long-term core portfolio that we, the firm, actively manage. If you look at the left-hand side on the pie chart, starting right at the top, you have a little over 35% of your portfolio in U.S. Treasury notes. Then on the right-hand side, you see agencies in that tan color. You have roughly almost 40% in agencies. Now, these are government-sponsored enterprises such as Federal Home Loan Bank Mortgage Corporation, the Fannie Mae, which is your Federal National Mortgage Corporation, and then you have 18% in corporate notes on the left-hand side in blue. These are in your holdings, corporate notes are the long-term. They mature anywhere from 1 to 5 years, which is provided by your investment policy. These are names such as Home Depot, Starbucks, and Apple that you have in your portfolio. Then you have a little bit in commercial paper, roughly 6% of your portfolio is in commercial paper. Same thing as corporate notes, except it matures in 270 days or less. Okay. On your upper right-hand, on the right-hand side column there, you see your current month's earning on this long-term portfolio, roughly $92,000. For the past quarter, you earned $241,000 in interest, and for the 9 months ending March 31st of this year, $641,000. If you were to add in the 241 from the first quarter to the 641 that you earned for the 9 months, we anticipate roughly $880,000 for the school district. If you add your cash of roughly $450,000 and this of $880,000, for this school year, the district would have earned approximately $1.3 million in interest income. That's something that you can use.
And we always like to put it in terms of teachers. We're at the point where we're funding a little over 28 teachers to the district out of these investments. And I don't know if we've got a school of 28 teachers, but I'd like to see the day when we can say we're funding all the teachers at one school for the district out of our investments.
And once again, this portfolio follows the Florida State Investment Statutes for school districts and your investment policy. So everything is done per your investment policy, per state investment statutes for school districts. We're very happy. The staff is very easy to work with. It makes my job a whole lot easier.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Jang.
We did give you the small presentation. I gave Dr. Graham the full presentation. If any of you have the desire to drill down into exactly what the investments are and where they are, I can get you a copy of that, and I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Great work.
I have. Okay, so we then are going to get into the 2016 preliminary budget. And before I do that, I have just a couple of pages that I'd like to give to you. A couple of, one is an update from what you have in your packet, and then I have a little strategic plan cheat sheet for you as well. So I'm gonna. If you would, just keep those sheets handy, and when I get ready to refer to them in the presentation, I will let you know. So remember, we had to give this information over to you on Tuesday afternoon, and at that point, there were a lot of things that we did not know. We did not know actually what revenue at that point we were going to receive through the FEFP. The legislature hadn't finished its work yet. We didn't know what the final FRS, or the retirement rate, was going to be, which has an impact to the budget, of course, because we are contributing that amount for each, or that percentage on the salary of each employee in the district. We did not know what rule changes there were going to be for the additional, the 300 schools with the scores in reading. We did not know that at that time, so we created the budget at that point based on some assumptions. Now, that information is finally available, so what I'm going to do is talk about how we built the budget before that information was available, and then update you on what that information finally is now, and what that impact is, and what it means. So the budget assumptions that we used before we had the final information, we used the FY16 Senate run, the first one that we received, as what the best guess was for what we were going to be receiving through the FEFP. It was $652 million, and so that's what we had built into the operating budget. We estimated that there would be a 5% increase in the tax roll, and of course that most of all impacts the capital budget, so that's what we had assumed at the time. We assumed that the retirement rate was going to be at 8.44% for FY16. Now, current year, right now in FY15, that retirement rate is 7.37%. So that was an increase of a little over 1%. It would typically be, what we would see. So that was our assumption. And then we also assumed that the same 9 schools that are in the 300 selected schools that do the extra time to concentrate on reading instruction, we assumed that those same schools would continue to do it. And in this year's budget, that had an impact of close to $2 million in the current year's budget. So now let's talk a little bit about what the reality is now that we know the information from the legislature. We did get a final FEFP run that the legislature completed, I believe it was Tuesday night. We sent the information over Tuesday during the day, and then I think Tuesday night we received it. So with the first calculation approved by the legislature, that calculation gave us $656.6 million within the FEFP. And that's a $4 million increase from what our assumption is. Now I want to talk about a few things within that FEFP, and if you look at the handout that I just gave you, and at the top it says FEFP calculation, you'll see there are several columns on that sheet. The first 4 columns are all of the calculations we received through the FY15 year. And we get several different calculations through the year. What we're showing you right now is the first 4 that we received in FY15, so you see some differences between them. And then we have the first calculation of 2016, or that $656.6 million that the legislature just approved. So there's a couple things on this FEFP that I want to point out, and I think it's very important. Overall, it was based on what we thought we were going to get. It was a more positive picture. Like I said, we had built in $652 million. We ended up getting $656. That's a $4 million increase. So when you look at what they've done with our FTE, remember when we started off our conversations back in January and February related to the budget, we talked about how for us, for our county and across the state, they were lowballing the FTE numbers across the districts. At that point, I think they had given us about 1,200 FTE. It was pretty low, and we knew that it was low. They did come back and allow us to have some more FTE growth for next year, which is a good thing. So right now, this calculation for 2016 is based on 90,137 FTE. That's an increase of a little over 2% from what we had this year, and in raw numbers, that's a little over 1,800 kids. So we did see so far this year close to 2,000 or a little over 2,000 kid increase from FY14 to FY15. So this number still may be a little low, but it's much better than what we were looking at before, so not bad. When you look at the base student allocation, you see that for next year they have they've increased it to $4,154 and some change. That's a 3% increase over where it is right now. So again, that's a good thing, very positive. They did add a new categorical into the picture this year. It's called the Federally Connected Student Supplement. For our district, it was a very small amount, a little over $62,000. And that amount is supposed to be used to support students who have some kind of connection to certain categories that they've outlined, namely families of military families, students with parents that are one or more parents in the military, or students that are Native American, reservations, that type of thing. So for our district, the allocation for that was very low, $62,745. And another thing that I want to point out is, remember I said we assumed $652 million, we got $656 through the FEFP. It's a good thing. But when you look at the highlighted column that I have there, and that is proration to funds available, now we talked about this before, and that is something that happens real quietly throughout the year, in that they will announce what the FEFP is, and we'll talk about that, and we'll build a budget on that, and that's what we've got. But then throughout the year, as they do these additional calculations of the FEFP, if it turns out that the state really does not have enough money to fund what they originally said that they would give us, we get what's called a proration, or that is they take money away from us based on what we're supposed to get, and then based on what they can afford. So as you can see, in the fourth calculation, which is the last calculation so far this year that we've received, the proration was $3.4 million so far this year. So we were supposed to have received an FEFP allocation of a certain amount. That amount was reduced by $3.4 million based on what they're actually giving us. So as you see, even though at this point we're saying, okay, we can build in an additional $4 million into the budget because we assume something lower than what we're now getting in the FEFP, keep in mind that that amount could disappear pretty rapidly based on what might happen throughout the year for a proration. And we've received a proration every year at least since 2008. So we don't expect that FY16 will be any different. So as you come down to the bottom of the sheet, you will see that with the FEFP, it'll be split 59 to 41% approximately. 59% of these FEFP funds will be coming from local sources. 41% will be coming from the state. And then at the very bottom of the sheet, you see how we break this 27 or almost $28 million increase into different categories. So the categoricals that we received, or that is those monies that have to be used for specific purposes, the increase of those monies from this current year to next fiscal year is about $2.4 million. You'll see that under the heading categoricals and mandated expenditures, the dollar amount increase, $2,358,506. So you'll see that we also break down the amount of categoricals that we are receiving per FTE, a little over $1,500 per FTE. Now, in total, we'll be receiving $7,284 per FTE when you look at the total FEFP allocation. That break between what we can use for categoricals and what is there for growth and price level or inflationary increases is very important. Because when we look at what we have built into the budget and what we can do, it's going to break into those different categories. So if you see the dollar amount up at the top where I talk about the dollars that we received per unweighted FTE for growth, what the dollar increase for growth is and what the dollar increase for price level or for inflationary increases are, when we build the budget, that's the types of numbers that we're looking at to determine or to figure out what types of, what amount of money do we have to help us cover the growth for this current fiscal year, how much of that growth money has to go into schools versus what will be available to retain here in the department level to help mitigate some of the growth. And when you see the dollar amount that we have available for growth this year based on this FEFP is about $10.3 million, and then another $15 million that's there for price level, or that is inflationary increases. When prices go up, we must pay more money for certain things, inflationary costs or growth costs such as salary increases, benefit increases, and things like that. So those are the dollar amounts that we'll be looking at when we look at how the budget breaks and what we will be able to do with the additional dollars that we have. Are there any questions related to the sheet? Because there's a lot of numbers on there, but they're all pretty important.
Board members, any questions?
All right now.
Okay. All right. So the tax roll increase that we assumed, which is about 5%, right now seems to still be accurate, still holding, and that's still what we have within our capital budget. The certified tax roll from the property appraiser comes out on July 1. So next week, we are believing we'll receive that certified tax roll, and then we'll know for sure what that tax roll increase is, and we'll adjust our budgets accordingly. The retirement rate, we have, I'm sorry, the PowerPoint says 7.22. It is actually 7.26%. It is lower than we anticipated. Remember, on the previous slide, I said we budgeted retirement at 8.44. It came in at 7.26, which is actually lower than we anticipated, and actually lower than the current year's retirement rate of 7.37. Go figure, don't know, it's what they did. So 7.26 is what we are now building into the budget. That change as well generated an additional $4.6 million savings in the budget that we did not have before because we were anticipating a higher retirement rate. And then we found out that the same 9 schools will remain with the extended time, so the assumption that we made in the budget was correct. We'll continue with those same 9 schools. Last year, the budget impact, as I said, was close to $2 million, so this year it'll be a little bit, or FY16, it'll be a little bit more than that. So when we look at the FY16 preliminary budget by the numbers, this is how it lays out with a total budget at this point of a little over $1.3 billion. Now, these numbers will change when we get to the tentative budget time because, as I said, we'll get the certified tax roll from the property appraiser on July 1. That tax roll will be sent to the state. The DOE will take those tax rolls and they'll recalculate FEFP based on the certified tax rolls. And so the money that we get will be slightly different at that point, and the mix of local versus state could also be a little different at that point. So we will be looking at that, and we'll be briefing you on that on July 24, and we'll talk, or we'll be sending you some information on that on July 24, I should say, and we'll talk about that timeline a little bit later. But these preliminary budget numbers, as you see them now, they will change when the tentative budget comes on to you on July 28th because of those things, as well as adjustments that we continue to make between now and the tentative budget. The breakout of the general fund, about 65% are salaries and benefits at this point, and we anticipate that that percentage will rise a little bit as we get towards the tentative budget, as schools continue to do their thing, finalize their budgets, and we assume that that percentage will rise. The capital budget at $185.3 million, again, that's based on the tax roll as we have it. If that certified tax roll comes out a little bit different, we will adjust, and then that number will change as well. And then we anticipate that the federal funds number of $58 million will continue to rise as well as we receive more grant awards from the feds and continue to build those into our budget. So those are the main areas that you see will change between now and the tentative budget approval. So as we look at the details of the budget, and you had several handouts within your budget briefing material that you can refer to, the school resources that we have in the budget were allocated per the DRA process. And we had talked about this a little bit in one of our previous briefings, but I included within the budget packet the DRA manual that explains in detail how we allocate the resources to each of the schools, the formulas that we use, and the processes that we use to do that. But within the general fund budget that we have right now, it breaks about 70% of that is at schools, and then the rest, the 30%, is here at the department level. And that percentage has stayed pretty consistent throughout the years. So that's the schools piece. Now, the department side, we allocate resources to departments based on prior year expenditures, and any new positions that a department would like must be specifically requested. So you also have within your budget packet a listing of the new positions by fund that we are requesting to put into the budget for the FY16 year. There's a couple of different pieces of information that I'd like to point out. First of all, we have effective dates on each of those positions, so that if, usually when a new position is requested, that position is requested to start on the date after the final budget approval, but some of the dates listed are on July 1st, so if they are positions that are specifically related to things that we need to get up and running for school, then we are putting in an effective date of July 1, so that that position will be here, or that person will, we can get started on that. That person will be here in order to support the getting ready for school operations throughout the summertime. In addition, one of the things that we tried to do throughout the budget process was to really concentrate on the strategic plan and relate everything that we were building into the budget to the strategic plan. So you will see on each of these positions that are being requested, there is this strategic plan, action plan number next to that position. And that strategic plan, action plan is the one plan that the particular request most leans towards accomplishing. And the second page that I gave you within the things that I handed out at the beginning of the briefing was a little cheat sheet on each strategic plan, action plan. So you can see between, you know, the numbers that are listed next to the position request, you can look at this cheat sheet and see which action plan that position is relating to. The positions are broken down by fund because there are different funding sources for each of these positions, and it is totaled at the end. And then, of course, we always have a conversation about the reserves that are built into the budget. At this point, the reserves for contingency and board priorities remain at $20 million and $26 million for next year, respectively. So that breaks down to about 6.7% of the new revenues that are coming into the operating fund for next year. Are there any questions related to that detail? In addition to the position list that you see, you also have the continuing project request and the new project request as part of your budget packet too. So every department project or every project that we have, or that is different initiatives that we have put into the budget, we have listed each of those projects here. We've listed a short description of what that project is for. We've listed the strategic action plan that project matches to next to it, and the amount of the amount of that project that we are proposing to put in the budget for all continuing projects and new projects. So are there any questions related to any of that?
No questions.
Steve, you want to take over? Mr. Teuber, you want to take over?
No, please continue.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, though.
Any questions, board members?
Okay, so if no questions related to that, then, sorry, lost my little way in the PowerPoint, sorry about that. Okay, so we have some additional work to do within the budget, and let's talk about what those things are and the timelines related to each of those. So first of all, excuse me, our bargaining needs to be completed, including any compensation implications, because that, of course, will have effect on what's built into the budget. So bargaining with both employee units have started, and we'll continue to do that work. We also have to make adjustments to the capital budget based on what we had previously briefed. So remember, we talked before about reducing that transfer from capital to operating. We have reduced that by $10 million, so in the capital budget that you see, that adjustment has been made. We will continue throughout the year to talk about the progress that we're making within capital and talk about some of those ongoing issues. and relate that to what a long-term capital plan would be. We have talked about a long-term capital plan in terms of for the next 3 or 4 years, what that would look like, given no additional revenue. And so we'll continue to talk about that, knowing that going forward for FY17 and forward, we're either going to have to put that plan into place or come up with another one, given the situation with additional revenue or not. So we'll continue to discuss that. And then monetary effects of any new legislation will also need to be budgeted. So as we really get into what the new laws for next fiscal year are, and as the effects of those become more apparent, we know that we have to have some flexibility to deal with those as the year goes along. We'll send, well, I said we expected to have updated numbers and we'd send it to the board, and we've talked about those already. Now, by statute, the superintendent's proposed tentative budget has to be to the board by July 24. And Dr. Graham will send that to you in memo form. We'll be sending you that proposed tentative budget that will have some backup in there in terms of pages out of the tentative budget book, some specific breakdowns of each of the funds of the budget, and a letter explaining what's in your packet. That will come to you by July 24. In addition, as part of that packet, you'll have copies of the newspaper advertisement that will also appear in the news press on July 24 as well. And then after that, we'll have the tentative budget hearing on July 28. We'll do the final budget briefing on August 25th and the final budget hearing on September 8th. So that's the timeline of what will happen between now and the approval of the final budget.
Okay. Board members, questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay,
Okay,
good.
yeah.
Thanks very much, Dr. Desamore. And by the way, thank you for this chart. Much
nice to have the
appreciated,
cheat
the
sheet.
alignment. Yes.
She passed it out, and you weren't here, so she'll get it to you. Yes. Cheat sheet. Because when you look through their budget. Thank you. It's projects. It shows where it lines up with strategic plan. Perfect. See that on the PowerPoint.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Graham, Mr. Martin, community members, and district staff. This infant toddler job description is being brought forward today as part of the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant. It is also aligned with the district's strategic plan, Objective 1.5, become a model organization for advocating access to high-quality early childhood education and educational resources. The Child Care Partnership Grant was awarded to the district by the Agency of Children and Family, the Office of Head Start, in February 2015. The purpose of the grant is to increase the quality of child care programs in the area served by the grant. This grant partners with 4 private child care providers in the community and with the Lee Adolescent Mother Program within the district. All children in this grant will receive Early Head Start services. Caregivers are required to meet Early Head Start staff qualifications of a Child Development Accreditation, which is called a CDA, or higher, and provide all the required Early Head Start services, including home visits, parent conferences, and screening and assessments for children. For all the contracted private child care partners, the grant is improving staff salaries by providing a cost differential of $3 an hour.
So what we did is we developed a job description called the Infant Toddler Caregiver, and the purpose of that was to reflect the additional qualifications and requirement of the grant. So the description was presented to Labor Management, where it was decided that we would give a $3 per hour supplement for current child care attendants to align the caregivers, the district caregivers, with what those in the community are getting with the grant. Our child care attendants come in at a pay grade 2. So it's pretty much an entry-level job, and then with the additional qualifications that they have, it seemed only fair to try to bring them to the same level as those that we would be doing for our community providers. So the supplements are going to be awarded to the current child care attendants based on their seniority, and the result that we are expecting is that the improvement in quality will not just be for individual classrooms, but to the overall quality of the program. Any questions?
No, thank you.
I just have one question. Looking at the requirements, somebody has to make a significant investment in getting, I would assume, in getting the certifications and the training necessary. First of all, are there a lot of people providing the training in the county that, and are there, how do they pay for these?
Well, go ahead.
The providing the training is provided by Florida Southwestern College is one place where you can get the course training. You can also get a state FCCPC, which is a state equivalent of a national CDA. You can get that through FMIT. So depending on which route people go, but it is an investment for people. In the grant, we have also put money in the grant for people, especially in the community, but it would also pertain here, because every staff has to have that in the first 18 months of the grant. So by month 19, everybody has to reach that level. We do have about half, maybe a little less, in the Child Care Partnership who have done that. And we have used some department funds to help support their learning.
Okay, thank you very
There's
much.
also some online courses that they can take as well to achieve that credential.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thanks very much. And that takes us to public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to, anybody on the right who wishes to address the board? Mr. Fox? Okay.
I guess, can you hear me? Yeah, I guess you can guess what I'm going to talk about. And well, once again, we see the debt is a major part of our reality. And I guess my advice to the board would be to change a little bit. I had been advocating the sales tax for paying for Bonita High School and the other high school, but apparently that day has passed. So I'd like to see the board aggressively go after the debt with the half-cent sales tax and the additional debt retirement millage that the state allows over a 3 or 4 year period, and just advertise it straight as debt retirement, everything. Every penny that comes in from the sales tax, from the debt retirement, go after the debt. This is going to be, all kidding aside, it's going to grow into a major, major problem. Going to end up like Chicago. Yeah, that's hopeless up there. So there's really no reason that Lee County, with the growth and the prosperity that falls out of the sky, that this district, and the county's got, I think, $1 billion in debt. Lee Memorial Hospital, $500 million or more in debt. How can all these entities, roads, schools, and hospitals, that's the local, that's our responsibility. As a school board, you have to act independently. You can't say, I got my letter from Heather Fitzenhagen, and I almost laughed reading it. That what they're not telling you is on the FTE, when you subtract out the debt, you're really only getting $6,650 per FTE, not what they say it is. So it's not going to get solved. The only group that can do it is you. And there's a lot of people out there who say, the money won't be put where it's put. No, it's going to debt retirement. Do it. You can do it in 3 or 4 years, and this district will be entirely different. Everybody and every aspect of the district will improve if you get out from under this debt. So don't wait. You got a whole year. I know you didn't want to spend the $1.2 million, understandable. I think that you should have, but since you didn't, that's okay. Looking forward to the next year, it doesn't cost you a penny. It costs nothing. There's no reason not to put it up there and let the public decide what they want their school district to look like. This is a matter that the district, that the public should have, and the state taking, the certificates of participation back in '91 was the biggest mistake in the history of this state. No doubt about it. So do what you can to resolve it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the right who wishes to address the board? Anybody on the left? Mrs. Quackenbush? No, I think he was. No, I didn't specifically.
Thank you for hearing me today, Board. Job one is really, what are we teaching our children? I don't care if we have the most wonderful, fancy castle in the world, complete with the most wonderful computers. If we are not teaching our children the right thing, it's all for naught. Parents have entrusted us with their children's minds, and the citizens have entrusted us to prepare the future citizens and leaders and watch over our $1.3 billion budget, which we just heard about quite a bit. SB 864 is a new law that was put in place in 2014.
Ms. Quackenbush, I'm going to stop your time, pause for just a second. Could you identify what item on the briefing meeting agenda you're addressing? The subject of comment is limited to the items on the agenda. Yes, if you'd like to address budget, please do so. Proceed.
We have a $1.3 billion budget. And when we look over that budget, we see all kinds of extraneous things that may or may not have value, without much regard to really devoting our attention to what we are teaching our children and how can we enhance that. Now, SB 864 calls for us to be responsible for the curriculum which we purchase. And there is a $9 million purchase that is on the budget tonight for purchasing books that are from Pearson PLC out of England. I have a 4-page list of lawsuits and judgments against Pearson PLC for various types of inadequacies, whether they were wrong test questions, whether there were errors, computer problems, and of course we faced a number of computer problems ourselves in administering the FSA tests. My question is, why are we squandering our money on these computerized tests and Pearson books, which are known problems to the first goal that we have, which is teaching our children valuable things? I have plenty of resources to share with you on why the history books that we have chosen and our curriculum committees have approved, and you have approved preliminarily, are in error and misleading to our children, violating our first precept of making sure we are teaching our children according to our state statutes 1003.42, which require our history to be taught as factual, not as constructed. The My World History book for 6th grade is not such a book, and I can certainly demonstrate that to anyone who would like to spend some time with me and reference other books in relation to what is taught in this book. Now, I'll be talking about this tonight as well, but I encourage you not to waste valuable money to buy things that are corrupting the young minds that we are entrusted with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay, seeing none, it's time for board comment. And I'll start with Mr. Toiver.
I have none this afternoon.
Okay. Over here.
I have none.
Mrs. Dozier.
Well, I attended a FSBIT meeting while I was up in Tampa recently, and I know that there were a couple of staff members there as well as the superintendent, And I look forward to getting some type of a report from the superintendent as far as where we are with that. We were also invited again to come and see a clinic in Polk County, and they are, in fact, several people around the table were talking about the clinics in their district and how effective they are and how much it has benefited the reduction in cost of their health insurance. It's helped with teacher retention. It's also helped, because this is like another benefit, not the pay, but it's a benefit. And it's also helped reduce absenteeism among staff, which I think is very, very important to us. I think all of us are participating in leadership training with the John Maxwell training, and I just say thank you publicly to Mr. John Moran for offering that training to all of us. I also had the opportunity to meet with Jennifer Pinkert, who presented to me a very professional, well thought out, well put together plan for to roll out something about a referendum and how to go about doing that. I was really very impressed, and I told her that I know she's seen several board members. I told her that the best thing for her would be to meet with every board member. I also went was it yesterday morning? Yeah, yesterday morning I met with VAB at the county, and it looks like tax rolls are up, so we should be looking forward to a little bit of additional funding as a result of tax rolls being up. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
Okay, just very briefly, I want to thank staff for today's presentations, particularly those built around the finance and budget, because you made it understandable for even me, and that's a good thing. I want to appreciate my colleagues for participating in and completing Master Board training, and I look forward to our next steps as we move along, establishing our priorities and goals. I just want to make a comment about the Drug Free Coalition. I've been attending some of their planning meetings, and they'll be having their second annual Run for Prevention at Florida Gulf Coast University in October, and there are opportunities for sponsorship, which would include putting together a team and running, and I think that goes right along with our wellness initiative in this district, and also puts money into the hands of the people who are working diligently to prevent and intervene with people who are suffering from substance abuse. And I think that's all I have today. Thank you.
The only question, I just have a question for Dr. Graham, and I apologize if I've asked you this question before, but training of substitutes, have we talked about, as a district, providing training to substitutes?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Getz left. I was going to say this in my comments. Mrs. Robery, after the last meeting when Mr. Getz spoke, Dr. Carlin got with Ms. Robery and Mrs. Ralph, who oversee curriculum and staff development, and they are working on a plan right now that we're going to start with the Chromebooks because we think that's a priority for those, particularly those at substitute and middle school. But we are working to develop a plan for substitutes to get the training and the things that they believe they need, and we believe right now the priorities from our perspective and theirs focus around the technology and also thinking maps, because that's an approach that's used in every classroom, and if they had an understanding of it, they would be able to carry on to some degree when the teacher's gone. So that is in the works, and it is our goal that some of that technology training, at least an overview, happen before the start of school, and they're working directly with Mr. Getz on that.
Okay, good, thank you. Mr. Martin?
I do have a school law minute, if I may. And if you recall, we've been talking about sunshine law over the last few months, and specifically the public meeting component of the sunshine law. For a few months, we've been discussing what types of meetings are subject to those requirements, what types of meetings are public meetings under the Florida law. And today I want to talk to you about what that status means, what requirements are imposed upon meetings that are classified as public meetings. The first most obvious requirement is that the public meeting must be open to the public. At a very basic level, that means that members of the public must be able to walk in the door and witness the meeting taking place. But at a higher level, it also means that the meeting must be held at a location that's accessible to members of the public. There must be sufficient seating, and meeting location must be of a sufficient size for the individuals interested in the items on the agenda to participate, to attend that meeting, and also should be in a location that is reasonably accessible, reasonable amount of time for an interested member of the public to travel to. That is, meetings of Lee County School Board should not be counties away from this location, so members of the public interested in the business being taken care of could attend. The second requirement is reasonable notice. With respect to a regular meeting, that's defined by statute as 7 days. With respect to a special meeting, it's a 2-day notice. And otherwise, the law basically is that the notice be reasonable, that is calculated to provide notice to those individuals, members of the public, that be interested in the matters being discussed. The third requirement is that there be an agenda established, and also there's a requirement that those agendas be provided in advance of the meeting to provide members of the public notice what's going to be discussed, so they can make a decision on whether there's anything that they're interested in and would like to attend the meeting to witness. A fourth requirement is minutes. Each of your school board meetings are required to result in a document reflecting what is discussed at the meeting. It does not have to be a verbatim discussion of everything that's discussed at the meeting, but should be a general summary of all the actions taken. There is no requirement in law for school board meetings or other public meetings to be broadcast or to be recorded in any way. The fifth requirement, the final requirement, is that there be an opportunity for public comment with respect to actions, with respect to proposals presented to the school board for action. In that context, there's not a requirement that there be public comment at every meeting, but certainly meetings at which you are taking action, there has to be an opportunity provided for public input before you take that action. That's all I have today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Graham.
Well, I was going to talk about the subs, but the only other thing I want to say is thank you to the board for the work that people don't see you do behind the scenes. And we've done a lot of workshopping in the last 2 months, I guess, and I appreciate the conversation and the honesty and the willingness to say the hard things and listen to the hard things. I think it's going to make us better as a team, and I just want to publicly thank you because the public may not know how much you work behind the scenes to become an effective, strong board. So I appreciate it. I just wanted you to know that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything for good of the order? Okay, seeing none, we'll see you everybody back here at 6 p.m. Thank you.